All right, guys, some of you are struggling when it comes to standard modeling. So don't worry about booleans for a little while. Don't worry about subdivision. Just practice working with standard mesh and playing around with vertices, edges, and faces. So let's go to edit mode and just create a plane real quick. Shift A. Now, so one of the things you need to realize is that, a vertex, for example, you can duplicate those, right? You can duplicate an edge, and you can take these, you can extrude them, right? You just extrude that. If you want to duplicate a few of these, you can do this. You can press F, you can just fill it. Okay. Now, let's say you wanted to do something a little bit different. Let's say you go like here, 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 whatever, something like this. And you shift select these. You can also just hit J, connect them all together. Take the last two, press F, you can create an edge. So it's important to understand when you're creating models that you're able to control things in this manner. And once you understand this, you can start doing things like, well, you can fill a face here. And press F to fill that, right? So, break your models down. Start thinking about things in this manner. This applies to also just creating shapes in general. So like, if you don't have anything selected, you can just control right click. And you can start creating vertices with edges. I don't know if you know that. So you can definitely do things like this. Like the last two, press F. Alt click that, F, right? E, extrude it out. There you go. Now, one of the things you do need to realize, though, if you're kind of new to Blender, they're double-sided rendered, the faces here. That's not how it works in most game engines. And also, when you're editing the mesh, it can cause a lot of problems. So just turn on backface culling. All right, this is the easiest way to do this. It's going to look like this now when you're working on your meshes, okay? Also, remember, 1, 2, 3. All the different selections here, vertex, edge, face, they have different context menus when you right click. So that's useful, but it's also going to determine like how you can do certain things. For example, let's see if I can make this happen anyways. If we have something like so, and let's say we got an edge like that. You see, if I try to dissolve this edge, I do a quick dissolve or dissolve selection, Control X, it collapses it down. It's not what you probably want. So sometimes you have to select things by face, for example, maybe Control X that instead. So just keep that in mind when you're working on your models here. Now, let's go ahead and turn floor off, and we'll turn backface colons on already. So cavity, both, set ridge down. And you're also going to want to utilize things like, I'm going to go to key map and do tab for pie menu. Okay, tab for pie menu here. Instead of hitting Control Tab, now you can just hit Tab and you'll get the pie menu. Control Tab is normally the pie menu. So now, when you're modeling, don't forget that sculpt mode, these are still technically modeling tools. Like you can just go through here and utilize these things whenever you need to. So if you want to use something like grab, you want to just kind of pull things around, like this is a possibility. You can do this. You can definitely work on your mesh, and, just make it nicer using the sculpting tools if needed. But now, when you need to go to object mode, edit mode, sculpt mode, it's all right there. It's very quick to do just by hitting tab and going in a direction, right? So let's go ahead and I want to turn wireframes on and off. So I'm going to check or right click this little checkbox. We can assign a shortcut. I use my mouse for this. So now we can turn it on and off as needed. Okay. And let's go ahead and, if your normals are backwards on something, by the way, you just alt and flip them, recalculate them outside or inside. This is super useful sometimes when you're doing things like interior rooms and you're not worried about doing an exterior. You just make a cube, alt in, recalculate on the inside. Sorry, not that way. Alt in, recalculate inside, right? So this is always a great way of working. Let's just try out ideas when doing environments and whatnot. But you can do that with any shape, basically, if you need to, or just flip them. All right. So back to these right here. Let's go ahead and delete all that. We'll just press Shift A and create a new plane anyways. All right. So these edges are a little bit interesting, but basically you can set them up doing any numbers like this, right? You can bevel a vertex. You can hit Control B and V and mouse wheel it up. You can just bevel a vertex like that, right? But let's say you had a really long edge out this way, and this kind of goes up here like that. Control B and V, you get this result, right? Eventually, it'll make its way back over there. But there's other ways of beveling. So if you hit Control B, V, we're going to click real quick, come down here. You'll see there's offset, but we can also do percentage. Okay. Percentage is also very good. It's a little bit of a different behavior, but when you're creating really interesting meshes, this is what you're going to be doing most of the time, just doing things like this, right? You're going to be trying to create different kinds of curves and all kinds of other fun stuff. So we create a couple curves here. We can use like proportional edit, for example. Press G, move around, mouse wheel up or down. We can kind of modify all of these edges at the same time, right? Now, what if you don't want to do that? Well, you could set it to connected only. Now you can just modify just the one edge, right? It's not going to affect these other ones, even if it's the same mesh. It's the same model right now. It's all combined together, right? Okay, so this is good because sometimes you want to just use proportional edit, not necessarily to move, but maybe like rotate to change curvatures and things like that, right? Well, now you can do that. But if you ever find yourself needing to get a different type of curvature going, you can always Control X everything, maybe except for the middle one, and turn proportional edit off for now. You can Control B and V. We can kind of just redo this how needed, basically, right? As long as we have the same amount of vertices on these edges, and you can check this very easily by going up here and turning on statistics. You can also turn on statistics to show up down here in preferences. And I don't usually use that one, but it's probably under interface, status bar. You can see here we got scene statistics, right? So that can also show up down there if you want to do it that way. Sometimes this one does tend to get in the way a little bit, but it's going to be optional. It's up to you. And so, as long as we have the same amount of vertices, we can hit A twice, deselect everything, L, it's got 7, see? Same numbers. You can press F, 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 right? All the way through. F, 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 F. There you go. So we can do things like this, but now this is like how you make your curves, basically, right? You can bevel these too, maybe by percentage, maybe not. You can do stuff like that. Right? Just get the shapes you need to make them right. And that's pretty much the name of the game when it comes to 3D modeling. Now you can do entire objects in different little sections or patches like this as well. So like a lot of times you might be doing like vehicles or whatever the case. Maybe you want to do something like this. You can see when we extrude, they kind of go the opposite of what we want. So we maybe flip those real quick. And we do this. Maybe we want to add a little bit of a curve, not too much of one maybe. We could do that. Now, later on, we could just maybe fill these together. They don't quite match up because we're kind of rushing through this, but you could try dissolving that maybe. Who knows? And there you go. If it's all in quads by the end of it, you can subdivide it, right? Not necessarily entirely true. Sometimes you do have to add holding edges. You'll see if we subdivide this, it's going to curve from here through there. But if we wanted this to be sharp in that area, turn subdivision off in edit mode, we would have to add a bevel like so or something like that to kind of sharpen it up a little bit, at least for this particular mesh anyways. So now we go through this process over and over and over again. Before you know it, we're able to model pretty much anything we want. If we ever want to correct something or change something or whatever, it does not matter. We know we can press Alt-Z, get into X-ray, use the cursor selector with C. We can press Y, bring this up perhaps. Maybe we need to use proportional edit and try to tweak the curvature of this thing. We'll just do it very large out in the middle of nowhere. You can see how that works out. So now just press L, turn that off, press R, and do this number, right? Now we can kind of maybe line these up again and try again perhaps. So in our case, yeah, still just rushing it too fast, but I think you get the idea. We can work these kinds of things out and tweak things manually, start creating some interest. Now, speed up your workflow a little bit more. You need to understand there's all kinds of selection methods that most of you probably aren't even using yet. Edge loops, edge rings, select inner loop regions, boundary loops, checker deselect. There's mirror select as well, which is nice. Useful stuff. So like if I do control shift clicking, this works well on quads, of course. You can do kind of like a little grid selection, basically. Shortest path fill region selection is what that's called. But control clicking's shortest path selection. But when you have a selection going, you could do select loops, right? You could do select boundary loops. Very useful. If you ever have a selection that you've made, you want to select everything inside of it, select loops that are loop region. So you can do that. Very easy. You can also invert it if you need to, right? So that's great. But Let's go ahead and just move on to symmetrize real quick. Let's do that. Symmetrize is right up here. I'm going to highly recommend, before you add any other quick favorites, right click Symmetrize and just go ahead and assign to quick favorites. So when you press Q, you can use it. Okay. So now we grab all this, we press A, Q. We're going to do negative X to positive X over here. Boom. And so you can see it's already set up by default like that. Now, if we ever walk this across the origin point here at the middle, yes, it will cut it like so, right? Okay, well, I don't really want that looking like that right now, so I'm going to rotate this and push it right there. We'll symmetrize it, and you'll see we get this result. Whenever you have something like this, sometimes you don't want it, Control Exit. Okay, it's that simple. And because we know we can start modeling in this manner now, we can kind of make whatever we want to make. We can do all kinds of fun stuff. But here's another fun little thing you can do. Maybe you can grab something more or less, control number pad plus, control number pad minus. You can select more or less that way. Clicking to select loops, right? We can press Shift H. That's going to hide everything else. This happens in edit mode, right? Shift H, it hides everything else. So we can grab just this middle section and use proportional edit. We can maybe tweak this like this, right? Maybe we bevel it a little or something, right? And now we'll turn proportional edit off. Alt H unhides everything, right? So you can see it doesn't influence anything that's not visible, basically. It's only what's visible. Now, if you go object mode and it shows up, edit mode and it does this, you get kind of confused. Beginners probably going to, as a beginner anyways, you'll probably mess up with that because it's easy to forget that edit mode things might be hidden. So Alt H, just remember that. One of the easier things you can do now is to practice with that because, you know, Shift H, there you go. And let's proportional edit it again. And let's just drag all those down. Quads are deformable, guys. So you can actually just do quite a bit of deformation with these things and not even really think about it too much. Like Control X that, dissolve it, do that, symmetrize it. It becomes fast. This is vanilla Blender too. We're talking about. It's not. This is nothing crazy here to mesh with this, right? Maybe you scale it apart. Okay, maybe you want to add like an inset. So inset, hit B. It won't do the border or boundary. Okay, when you do insets, you can also edge rail it. Inset again, you can hit Control and push it down. So when that subdivides, we'll get that result, right? If we're going to go to the subdivision route. But listen, when you're learning, don't even bother with that sometimes, you know? Just don't even bother. It's easier to just play around with planes and create cool shapes and just start seeing how you can work things out. And so we're going to get off the subdivision there for a second. Let's say you're doing this corner and you want it beveled. Okay. Right. Maybe you don't want to do percentage, so change that to offset or something. Offset or width. I like width myself, but we could symmetrize. Now, imagine taking this whole shape here and extruding it down and scaling it up, pushing it forward a little bit, maybe. A, Alt N, flip, boom. Right. So this is just the start of things, basically. We can start thinking about how we're going to actually make things and model them, make them interesting or whatever the case. You know, you can loop cut into here, loop cut into here. Control R, you can inset with I, hold Control, you see? Make some really cool stuff rather fast, and then start mixing up your edges and doing bevels here or there. Try to use segments, getting started at least like 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. That's powers of 2 or whatever, by 2s. So this is just going to make sure that you have a center edge like so for now. And then later on, you can play around with doing things like 6, 12, 24, and 48, things like that. So those tend to work out well as well. Now, right, anyway, so sometimes 6 doesn't work out too well. Just heads up. All right. Now, let's go through here and just bevel this backside. Right. So we can only bevel so far before that one falls apart. So there's like an order to bevels. There's certain ones you do first, and then you do the other ones second. So we do this one first, but then we can only bevel this one so much because of that. If we had went any further, you know, it clips over itself. Not that you can't try to correct that, but it can be rather challenging sometimes. So it's better to get it in the correct order anyways. So if we started with not this one here, and we started with this one though, this would probably end up looking wrong by the time we try to bevel this. or it might work out better, right? It just depends. Sometimes it might work, sometimes it might not. In our case, it actually seemed like it did well, so it's not really a big deal. Maybe you want to press M a few times, go back to percentage bevels. You see, this one acts a little bit goofy, so sometimes you got to add additional edges just to hold things in place. So we know when we bevel now, using percentage bevel, hit M a few times till it says percent at the top left. We know it's going to go to that edge instead of going into like that little triangular pattern or whatever. Sometimes that's what you want to do. And maybe give this one some more segments. And, you know, good designs oftentimes have very odd kind of curves to them in just different areas. So I mean, this is something to think about, right? Let's see if we can get a hold of all this and actually bevel this, right? Every time you make, you know, your changes to your mesh, you know, there's a chance that it starts to act really goofy when you start to do things, right? Like bevels with percentage won't work on this. We don't need that selected, and we'll try again. Okay, so it works, but we're starting to cross over right there. We could try turning loop slide off. Sometimes that might help. Sometimes it might not. Something else you can look into, and so on and so forth. So one thing I'm going to leave you here with right at the very end, I guess. When you are doing insets, it's all the way over on I. I don't care for that much. The shortcut for this thing over here is W. So you hit W, and it's annoying, in my opinion. I only use select box because there's no reason to use the other ones. You press C, you have the cursor selector, which actually works well. If you control right click and drag, you got the lasso select. So you don't need to use those all that much. Some people like using tweak. I don't really use it. But here's the thing. We're going to just replace inset basically. So right click inset, change shortcut, W. Check this out. It works just like that. You just do that. And so now whenever you need to do an inset, you guessed it, you don't have to fight with it anymore. You can just go through, make a selection, inset again, hold control. You see? It's really easy to do. And it works out really well anyways. So here's one more thing I guess we'll finish this video off with. And I've said this in a couple of videos, so it's not really anything new. But when you go to key map here, check out inset, right? Inset faces. I've changed to W, right? Oops, I'm set again. So it's going to show up with W, but usually I. These things are grayed out. You can change these though. So if you always want to have edge rail on when you're doing insets, you can do that. But you want to try sometimes insets get weird. Try turning edge rail on or off. Try turning offset on or off. Offset even, that is. And so on and so forth. So yeah, if you want to change these things and save your preferences, you can. And you can do this for other things too, like bevels, right? So bevels, a lot of times, you don't really have to change a whole lot here, but outer emitter, you can't even see what it says. It says outer emitter, right? If you want to change that right into arc right off the bat, that's good. You can do that. So you'll see once you've done that, we go here, we bevel, outer emitter, arc, like that. Okay. Very easy to do something like that, right? Maybe we can go through and bevel these up a little bit. Who knows? Right? If you just practice, you know, with the standard tools for a bit and start to really understand these things and kind of master them, then you'll be better off with it. All right. So what's something else? I'm going to give you a couple more of these real quick because some of these are really good to change. The knife tool. All right. Guys, this one is big. All right. This is in pretty much all my videos. But you can do measurements. You can just show the angle if you want. And you can change the angle increment to like 5 degrees. So now when you use a knife tool, it's going to look like this, right? Oh, let's go into edit mode real quick. The knife tool is going to look like this, where it shows angles like this, and it does 5-degree increments when you press A. Okay? Press A twice, you get relative to the edge that you're cutting from. You can cut to the next edge, and you got to keep going with that process to keep edges at certain angles and whatnot. But you can see relative to the last edge, we can do any numbers like this. So 90-degree cut this way. Super useful. Now, let's keep going to the next one. So we did bevel and we did all that. This is going to be the last one, all right? Promise. 3D cursor. You see we look it up. Shift right mouse. Okay, so let me explain what happens with the 3D cursor real quick. You shift right mouse. It's going to line up to the view, whatever angle you're looking at. See, is up, down, left, right. We shift right mouse over here, and it's trying to line up to our view. not the model. Okay. We can change that behavior right here under orientation, set it to geometry. Okay. Shift right mouse. It now lines up on the surface of this thing. So this is really good because you can see there's a slight angle here at the front, right? Well, now it lines up to that surface. I can press Shift A, and if I create something like a cylinder, check this out. We can align to the 3D cursor now. Cool. And it's that simple. So it's going to save you a little bit of time, perhaps. Anyways, that's it for this video. It's just a couple really quick tips that should help you out if you're just trying to get used to modeling. Do practice with the standard modeling tools, and then we didn't even really cover the knife tool all that much, but, use the knife tool, use bevels, use insets, use loop cuts, try all these different kind of standard tools out. And those are going to be the ones that really take you to the next level as understanding how to work with geometry and modeling and just having a lot of fun with creating things in 3D anyways. Now, once you start to get the kind of the hang of creating nice even topology, possibly quads or good looking Boolean end or good looking meshes with some end-guns or triangles or whatever, Boolean end-gun workflow starts to make a whole lot more sense after that because you understand how the mesh is supposed to behave. Subdivision will start to make a whole lot more sense because whenever you do things like this, you can normally convert this stuff into quads, and that's when you get your subdivision mesh, right? So a lot of people focus a little too heavily on sub D, thinking it's like, the only way of working. No, a lot of times to generate a subdivision mesh, you start with standard modeling, blockouts, things like that. But you might do some booleans along the way, and eventually you work it out into quads, and then you start doing your holding edges everywhere to finish out the 3D model. But see, that's a big, complicated kind of process when you don't even know something like this yet, just working with standard tools. Subdivision's a lot more harder, more challenging in a lot of ways. It's just so many little things that you still have to understand, right? When it just comes to like manipulating mesh in general. So practice with standard modeling, have some fun, and hopefully this helps you out a bit. So anyways, if you like the video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one. All right.